Good morning, everyone. Today we are going to be looking at unit conversions, and this is actually a continuation of our ideas from yesterday where we were looking at ratios, rates, and then unit rates. And don't forget that when we're looking at a ratio, what we are doing is we are comparing two like things. Like 1 out of 4 dentists recommend this product, so maybe don't go for that product. And when you're looking at rates in opposition to that, you were looking at a comparison between two unlike things. And when we are looking at rates, then we're looking at like miles per hour or dollars that you spend per piece of pizza. We also, of course, have what's called a unit rate. And a unit rate is, remember, just a rate over 1. So you typically do this when we're talking about speed. You are going 70 miles per hour. That's 1 hour. So that makes it a unit rate because that 70 is actually being divided by 1. What we're going to do today, though, is we're going to look at a specific sort of a rate. And those are going to be actually our conversions. So we're going to start with one that you can probably do without any help from like a new algebra technique. And that is switch 3 hours into minutes. Now this actually uses a rate because what we're really looking at is how many minutes are there in an hour, how many hours are there in a minute. And we know that for every 1 hour, we have 60 minutes. And now this is a rate. So what we want to do is we want to switch the hours into minutes. And there's a couple ways to do this. I'm going to show you my personal favorite way, and that is using our conversion chart. All you need to do a conversion chart is draw a straight line, put another one across. This is going to go across 2 lines in your notebook, and put a box filled in on the bottom. Now what you're going to do is you're going to take what you want to change and you're going to drop it here. So this is like a machine that's going to take whatever we have up here and it's going to turn it into our answer that we want. We want minutes. So this is going to convert it into minutes. And keep your units with all of your numbers. Now, what we do next is I want to switch from hours into minutes, which means I need to cancel out the hours. Well, if this is like a division sign, in order to cancel out hours, I want to essentially divide by hours. So I can put the hours on the bottom, and I'll look back at my unit to see how, or I'm sorry, my rate, to see how these things compare. Well, I can go from hours into minutes. And 1 hour, so I'm going to put the 1 by the hour, will be equal to 60 minutes. And that gives me my conversion. Now notice my hours will cancel, and that leaves me with minutes, which is my goal. So now what does this do? Well, this ends up being like a machine. All it's saying is take all the numbers across the top and multiply them together. So I've got a 3 and a 60. So I'm going to multiply those together. So 3 times 60 gives me 180. Well, that's great. So I'll do 180 across the top, right? And on the bottom, what I'm going to get is just all of those numbers multiplied together. Well, there's only a 1 down there, so I have a 1. And I take 180 divided by 1 to get my final answer. And I know that I'm left with minutes because it's the only thing left in my conversion chart. So my final answer would be 180 minutes. Now at this point, you might go, Miss Prince, if I looked at that problem, I'd go, well, I just take 3 and I multiply it by 60, and I'm done. And you know what? You're right. You could definitely do that. That is a short, efficient way of doing it. But there's a reason why I recommend this method. And that's because while some conversions like this one you can do pretty much in your head with almost no work, there are going to be ones that do take a lot of work. And it's also easy for us to, on accident, divide when we're supposed to be multiplying or multiplying when we're supposed to be dividing. So some of you guys, if you're rushing through this problem, might have gone, well, I just take 3 and divide it by 60. Or you might look at it and go, okay, I know when I'm doing this, I either divide or I multiply, but I'm not sure which. This method will always tell you if you're multiplying or if you're dividing. So it's a way to get around that problem. But let's look at where this sort of setup can be more useful with a slightly longer conversion that gets a little bit messier. Now, this next conversion is one that is near and dear to my heart because it left me with so much confusion for so much time. When I was traveling, I would frequently try my hand at, old American recipes, like ones that I grew up with, to try to show people that I was around there, like what sort of things we ate. But I ran into a problem because all of my measurements were in cups and tablespoons and teaspoons, but nobody there has cups, tablespoons, and teaspoons. No, what they use are things like milliliters and grams, where they are actually measuring all of their things. And there are pluses to both systems, to be sure. But what I ran into a problem with is like I couldn't get exact amounts, which for baking comes into play. So what I had to do is I had to convert all of my units over into another unit, and that was milliliters or grams. So milliliters are going to be the more exact one, because grams, that's a weird conversion, all right, because it depends on the material that you're using, like whether you're using powdered sugar versus brown sugar, things like that. But we can do exact conversions from cups into milliliters, and that's what I had to do. Now, in order to do this, one of the things I needed was a volume conversion chart. And when we're looking at these, it's going to get to be a little bit messy, because in these, it's going to show us like, well, here are the standard conversions that we're used to here in the US, all of these cups and pints and gallons, which those are things that we use. But the metric conversion, the ones that they were using in Ireland where I was trying to do my cooking and baking, well, those are going to be in like the milliliter and liter options. And they might even then give us a little bit of help here with this third chart that's going to show us how to go from our American stuff like pints into their more European measurements or scientific measurements, which are liters. So I'm going to need to do a couple conversions. So when I'm doing these problems and I'm looking at it, I go, okay, I'm starting in cups and I want to go to milliliters. Now, what I would love is to have a conversion like we had before, where we knew that 1 hour is equal to 60 minutes. But when I look at my chart, I can find cups here on this chart, and I can find cups here on this chart, doing fluid ounces. Here's another one where I go from pints into cups, right? But none of these things with cups really bring me to what I want, and that's milliliters. And when I look over at milliliters here, I do have milliliters over here, right? But there's a bit of a problem here because these milliliter conversions don't go into cups. So what do? Well, when I'm looking at these, like the milliliters and the cup ones, I need to find some overlap. So let's look at this. When I have 1 pint, I know that that's the same as 2 cups. So I could switch from my cups into pints. And down here, if I know that I have a pint, I know that I have 473.17648 milliliters. So kind of a messy conversion, but I have a conversion. That means I could switch from cups into pints and from pints into milliliters. So that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to write out those 2 conversions in that order. So starting at cups, in order to get from cups to milliliters, I'm going to have to go into pints first, so I can switch those pints to milliliters. So I'm going to say, first, according to my conversion chart, 1 pint equals 2 cups. And also according to my conversion chart, 1 pint is equal to 473.17648 milliliters. Now notice I have cups, I have milliliters, and I have an overlapping unit between them. So now I can set up my conversion chart. Now again, when you're setting these up, all you're going to do is draw that straight line across. You're going to do a second line and fill in the box underneath so you know that nothing needs to go there. Now, just like before, I'm going to take the original thing that I have, 2.5 cups, I'm going to drop it in there, including the unit. And I'm going to remind myself, in the end, what I want this to be is I want this to be milliliters. Hopefully I leave myself enough space there. So now I'm going to need to do my conversions. Well, the first thing that I want to get rid of is cups. So I'll write cups down here. Now what am I switching it into? Now, according to the two conversions that I found, I can switch cups into pints. And that will be the end of that conversion, right? So I'm going to draw another line. Now here, I'm going to put my conversion here. Now, how do I know which of these gets the 1 and which of these gets the 2? Well, the 2 is already linked with the cups, so I'm going to drop the 2 down by the cups. And here, how do I know what the pints get? Well, the 1 is already by the pints, so it's going to be 1 by the pints. Okay, so I have taken care of this conversion. I might as well cross it out. And notice that right now I'm at pints because these units will cancel, leaving me with pints. Now that's all well and good, but I want milliliters. So I'm going to once more go back to my conversion. I want to get rid of pints. Now since I want to get rid of it, that means it should end up in the bottom because remember we divide to get rid of things in the top of a fraction. And I want to switch it into milliliters. So I know that I have 1 pint, so the 1 goes by the pint. And for that 1 pint, I'm going to have 473.176, and let's just do 5 because I'm running out of space, milliliters. Now at this point, I have canceled out my pints as well, and I'm left with the unit that I want, and that's milliliters. So here's where I go to solving it. Remember, what you're going to start with is multiplying across the top. So I'm going to take all the numbers in the top and multiply them together. That means I'm going to take 2.5. I could multiply it by 1, right, because the 1 is there, but that doesn't actually do anything. So to save myself some time, just going to skip that multiplication by 1. And then I'm going to multiply it by that 473.176, well, it's 48 or 4 or 65, either way. And I get that for my answer, which is 1,182.9412. Now I go and I multiply across the bottom where I have a 2 times a 1, which I know is just 2, right? Because anything times 1 is just itself. Now that I have this, all I need to do is simplify that fraction to get my numbers, or really what I want is what we consider a unit rate, just something over 1. So I'm going to take my 1,182.9412 and I'm going to divide that by 2, because we have it divided by 2 here, and that gives me 591.47. That would be my final answer to this. And when we're looking at these, the reason why these sorts of conversion charts come in handy is because it really lets you track your work and you only have to do one step at a time. It's going to bring you there very slowly. Now what I want you to do is I want you to practice just a couple today to see how they go. Tomorrow I'll give you some answers and then we'll do some longer practice with ratio, rates, and conversions. So here are those problems. Here these are. Now keep in mind that you're going to have a lot of conversions here, and I did include units to ones that I didn't think that you'd automatically know. This sign right here is the pound sign, and that is not a weight. That is the currency for the British money, basically. British pounds are what they're called, and that's like dollars, so you do that conversion a lot. And 1 pound is equal to about $1.33 at this point. And last but not least, number 4 is going to be by far the hardest. It's going to take a few conversions, so watch that. I do need to see your work, and I'd like you guys to do it similar to the method that I did here, even if you're like, well, I like the other method more. I want you to just try this method out and get used to it. If you find in the future you don't like it, you never have to use it again. But just for the sake of this lesson and keeping things organized, I want you to try this out. So make sure that all of your work is shown to get that full credit. I hope you guys have a wonderful day.